I'm currently catching up with some of Henry Selick's films that I've not seen before. Now, I say catching up. Slow Bob in the Lower Dimensions predates me by 1 year. It was released in 1991, written and directed by Henry Selick. And having watched it, I can say I thoroughly enjoyed the experimental approach to this. It's certainly very unique. It definitely feels like a Henry Selick animation. And it's very, very thought provoking. Apparently, according to IMDb, it was actually a pilot for a surrealist animated series. Obviously, that never came about. Apparently, according to IMDb again, so correct me if you know this is incorrect, but apparently Tim Burton actually saw this short, loved it, and decided that Selick would be the perfect director for The Nightmare Before Christmas, and that's how Selick came to direct TNBC. So with that, I was very curious to see what it was like, and I can definitely see why Tim Burton would watch this and think, yes, this is the man to direct Nightmare, because there are certain styles that are quite similar, there are certain kind of feelings to it that are quite similar, but there are also a lot of differences. Fundamentally, it's completely different. But it's certainly very enjoyable. The description from IMDb sums it up really well, without spoiling anything. And this says, it's a nightmarish pilot about Robert Potemkin, a man with deformed back who lives in the attic of his family's house. One night, his Siamese sisters, Siamese twins, plan a prank on him. But sentient lizards send him to a parallel world to save photo people. There are a lot of things in there which, out of context, don't make any sense whatsoever, and that is absolutely the case. The Siamese twin characters are kind of claymation characters that look fantastic. I love the design of them. They have kind of rough around the edges movements. It's not very fluid, but that kind of gives it an almost jagged, unpredictable feel, and that works so well. It's not a scary animation, but it's definitely eerie and unpredictable, and you're never quite sure what's around the corner. This reference to photo people, they are basically photos of people, and there are scissors falling down. One of my favourite bits is when the scissors fall down and they strike well, it's not really the ground, it's kind of a white palette, a white background, but they strike the floor, and they kind of make a noise and do a kind of reverberative movement, and I just thought it was so exquisitely executed. It's such a small thing, but it really stood out to me. I thought the scissors worked very effectively. The spider writes emergency in its cobweb, and I loved how smooth that was. This is definitely an animation that's full of interesting motifs, interesting angles, definitely a lot of different faces to look at. It's very busy. No two frames are alike, to be quite frank. And it's definitely one of those animations where I'd love to sit down with Henry Selick and say, what did you mean with that? What was your intention with that? Maybe he didn't have any intentions. There are many shorts where the directors or the creators have just had an image in their head and they want to project that in film. But maybe Henry Selick was trying to portray certain things or emotions or feelings or messages. It's very busy. There's a lot going on. Mark Steger plays this Slow Bob character. He's not in it all of the time. He does kind of... The style goes back and forth between kind of the stop motion and then these photo people. It's very mixed. It is very experimental, and in that sense it works very well. If you're not a fan of that kind of film, you're not going to like it. I think it's very... Well, it's quite niche. But certainly if you're a fan of Henry Selick, it's definitely worth watching. And I'd say it's worth watching if you're a fan of Nightmare, because it's interesting to see kind of what Tim Burton saw, if this is true, of course, and kind of thought, yes, that's the vision I want for Nightmare. I want you to direct this, and it led to that. So it's very... Well, it's just interesting to think if this short didn't exist, who would have directed Nightmare? It could have been a very different project. It could have been Tim Burton directing it, of course. Who knows? But Slow Bob in Lower Dimensions is certainly very interesting. It's something that I think will need a few watches to fully absorb everything that's going on, but it's definitely worth checking out.